The late afternoon sun cast long, lazy shadows across the manicured lawn of Elmwood Park. For Ethan, a single dad with a mortgage that seemed to grow faster than his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, this was the golden hour. It was a time to forget the stacks of unpaid bills and the soul-crushing drudgery of his part-time security guard job. It was a time for scraped knees, sticky ice cream fingers, and the pure, unadulterated joy of watching his little girl chase butterflies. Lily, a whirlwind of pigtails and giggles, was currently engaged in a highly serious game of tag with a small brown terrier. Her contagious laughter was a balm to Ethan's weary soul. He sat on a park bench, nursing a lukewarm coffee, his gaze never straying from her. His life had narrowed since his wife's death 3 years ago, shrinking down to the most essential things: Lily's well-being and the constant nagging worry of providing for her. He hadn't been a hero or a captain of industry. He was just Ethan, a guy doing his best to keep his daughter's world bright, even when his own felt a little dim. Nearby, a different kind of life was unfolding. A little girl with fiery red curls and a frilly pink dress was expertly navigating the jungle gym. Chloe, Ethan noted her name from the hurried call of a nanny, was a masterpiece of tiny defiance. She was laughing, but her laugh was a little sharp, a little too loud, as if trying to fill a silence. Her mother, the ever-present absence, was a woman named Jessica, a name Ethan had seen splashed across the business section of the newspaper. CEO of a tech giant, a titan of industry. Her world, Ethan knew, was a million miles from his own. The peaceful tableau shattered in an instant. A black sedan, out of place in the family-friendly park, screeched to a halt at the edge of the parking lot. 2 men emerged, their movements quick and predatory. One of them, a man with a cold, hard face and a glint of metal in his hand, started walking purposefully toward the jungle gym. The other stayed by the car, a lookout. Ethan's instincts, honed by his security training and amplified by a father's primal fear, screamed at him. This was not a robbery. This was something targeted, something terrible. His eyes darted to Lily. She was still safe, chasing the dog near the far side of the park. But his eyes also fell on Chloe, frozen mid-climb on the jungle gym, her eyes wide with fear as the man drew closer. The nanny, her face a mask of terror, was already backing away, fumbling for her phone. The man raised the gun. The barrel was pointed directly at the little girl. Time seemed to collapse. The sound of the birds, the distant traffic, even the wind, all faded away. Thump. The only sound was the thumping of Ethan's heart against his ribs. He didn't think. There was no time for thought. There was only a visceral, overwhelming urge to act. He was already moving, his legs pumping, a desperate, clumsy sprint across the grass. Chloe, he bellowed, a roar of warning that was part plea, part command. The man with the gun turned, surprised by the sudden interruption. That split second was all Ethan needed. He launched himself forward, a human shield. He tackled Chloe off the jungle gym, his body absorbing the impact as they hit the soft mulch below. The gunshot was a thunderclap, a brutal punctuation in the quiet afternoon. A searing white-hot pain exploded in his back. He grunted, a short, sharp gasp, as his world tilted and spun. He could feel the warmth of the blood spreading across his shirt, a morbid inverse of the sun's warmth on his face. The shooter, now flustered, looked around in a panic. The lookout at the car started yelling. In the chaos, they saw the sirens in the distance and, deciding the job was no longer clean, scrambled back into the sedan and sped away, tires spitting gravel. The park, once a haven of tranquility, was now a scene of pandemonium. Parents were grabbing their children, their screams piercing the air. Lily, her small face streaked with tears, ran to him. "Daddy, Daddy," she wailed, her little hands patting his face. "I'm okay, honey," Ethan rasped, his voice a strained whisper. "Just ... a little tired." He tried to smile for her, but the pain was a tidal wave, pulling him under. He cradled Chloe in his arms, the little girl trembling, her small body racked with sobs. She was alive. She was safe. That was all that mattered. He lay there, on the ground, the world a symphony of flashing lights and panicked voices. He heard a new sound, a different kind of voice, sharp and commanding. "Chloe, Chloe, where are you?" 3 minutes. It had taken 3 minutes from the moment Ethan hit the ground to the moment Chloe's mother, Jessica, arrived. She had been stuck in a gridlock, her hands clutching the steering wheel in frustration, her mind 1,000 miles away on a quarterly report. A call from the frantic nanny had been incoherent, a jumble of gunshots and panic. She had abandoned her car, running the last 2 blocks in her expensive heels, her silk blouse stained with sweat. She burst into the scene, her brilliant mind, so accustomed to processing data and making decisions, struggling to comprehend the tableau before her. A huddle of people, a man on the ground, her daughter being held by him, safe but weeping. The man's shirt was soaked with blood. She dropped to her knees, her perfectly coiffed hair falling into her face. "Chloe, baby, are you okay?" she cried, her voice cracking with fear and relief. She hugged her daughter tightly, her hands running over every inch of her body, searching for a wound. Finding none, she finally looked at the man who had her daughter in his arms. "Ethan," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "My daughter, Lily ... she's safe." He gestured feebly to the side, where a police officer was now comforting a terrified Lily. Take Chloe." Jessica gently took her daughter from his arms. The medics were there now, their hands and voices a blur of efficiency. They carefully rolled Ethan onto a gurney, his face pale and clammy. "You saved her," Jessica said, her voice choked with emotion. "Why, you don't even know us." "She was a little girl," Ethan said, the words heavy and slow. "It's what anyone would have done." But it wasn't what anyone would have done. The world was full of people who would have frozen, who would have run, who would have looked away. He had not. He had run toward the danger. The next few hours were a whirlwind of flashing lights, screaming sirens, and the antiseptic smell of the hospital. Ethan was in surgery, his fate uncertain. Jessica sat in the waiting room, her mind a maelstrom of emotions, guilt, a cold, heavy stone in her stomach. Fear for the stranger who had saved her daughter, and a profound, life-altering gratitude. She learned his name, his daughter's name, and his story from the police. A single dad, security guard, just a regular guy. She also met Lily, a brave little girl who sat quietly in the waiting room with a child services officer, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. "You're very brave, you know," Jessica said softly, sitting on the floor next to Lily. "Your daddy is the bravest man I know." Lily looked up at her, her eyes still red-rimmed. He promised me we'd get ice cream after. A fresh wave of tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. I'll make sure you get the biggest ice cream in the world, honey. I promise. The surgeon emerged hours later, a look of grim relief on his face. He's stable. The bullet missed his major organs, but it was a close call. He's going to be okay, but he's got a long road to recovery. The relief that washed over Jessica was so powerful it nearly buckled her. She went to Ethan's room as soon as she could. He was sleeping, his face pale, an IV drip in his arm. Lily was there too, curled up on a chair, having finally fallen asleep. Jessica sat quietly, just watching him. This man who had changed her world forever. The days turned into a week, and then 2. Ethan's recovery was slow and painful. Jessica became a fixture in his hospital room. She was no longer the imposing CEO. She was just a mother, grateful beyond measure. She made sure Lily was cared for, hiring a nanny for her and ensuring she was chauffeured to and from the hospital every day. She took care of all of Ethan's medical bills, a sum that would have bankrupted him. You don't have to do all this, Jessica, Ethan said one afternoon, his voice still weak. Yes, I do, she replied, her voice firm. You gave me back my daughter. What you did, ... It was selfless. You didn't even think about the consequences to yourself or to Lily. You just acted. Ethan looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. The sharp, businesslike edges of her personality were softened by worry and gratitude. She wasn't just a powerful executive. She was a mother, a woman who had been seconds away from losing everything. I just saw a kid in trouble, he said simply. That's it. Their conversations were easy, flowing like two old friends. He told her about his late wife, about the struggles of raising Lily alone. He talked about his dreams of opening a small woodworking shop, a dream that felt impossibly far away. Jessica talked about the pressures of her job, the constant demands on her time, and the deep-seated guilt she felt for not being there for Chloe. I'm always working, she confessed one day, her eyes on the window. I tell myself it's for her future, but is it? I missed her first steps. I missed her first words. I almost missed the rest of her life, all because of a conference call. Ethan just listened, not judging, not offering platitudes. He understood. He had his own guilt, his own regrets, but his life was simpler. His priorities were right in front of him, in the form of a little girl with pigtails and a teddy bear. One afternoon, when he was finally strong enough to sit up in bed, Jessica brought Chloe to visit. Chloe was shy at first, but Ethan's gentle smile and quiet manner soon won her over. She sat on the edge of his bed, holding his hand, her small fingers tracing the bandages on his back. Thank you, Ethan, she said, her voice a tiny whisper. You're my hero. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He squeezed her hand. You're safe, Chloe. That's all that matters. A few weeks later, Ethan was finally discharged. He was still in pain, still recovering, but he was home. He had no job to go back to, no income, and the bills were piling up. He tried not to let the worry show on his face, but Jessica saw it. She had done her research, digging into his financial situation with the same meticulousness she used for a corporate merger. The day he came home, she was waiting. Ethan, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I've been thinking. You mentioned you wanted to open a woodworking shop. He nodded, a wry smile on his face. A dream for a different life, maybe. Not anymore, she said, pulling a leather-bound folder from her bag. I've bought a space downtown, an old storefront. It's yours. Fully paid for all the equipment. And I've set up a trust fund for Lily's college education. It's not a gift. It's a partnership. You are the sole proprietor, but I'm a silent partner, the investor. You pay me back when you can, and you will. You're a good man, Ethan. Candid. And you're a talented carpenter. You just needed a chance. Ethan was speechless. He stared at her, then at the folder, his mind reeling. The impossible dream, the one he had held on to in the darkest moments, was suddenly, impossibly, real. Why? He finally managed to ask, his voice thick with emotion. Pew. Because you saved my daughter, she said, her eyes meeting his. And because you reminded me what's really important. My company is successful, but it doesn't have a soul. You do. You have a heart, Ethan. And the world needs more people like you. The story didn't end with a happily ever after romance. It ended with a friendship, a bond forged in the crucible of a moment of terror and a lifetime of gratitude. It ended with Ethan and Lily starting a new, brighter chapter, with the promise of a future that was no longer defined by worry, but by hope. It ended with Jessica, the CEO, learning that the most important thing she could ever build was not a company, but a family, and that sometimes the greatest heroes are the quiet ones, the ones who don't seek fame or fortune, but who simply do what is right. Ethan's woodworking shop, the carpenter's heart, became a local institution. The sign, a beautifully carved piece of oak, was a testament to his skill and to a life given a second chance. He and Jessica remained friends, their two families intertwining in a way that was both unexpected and deeply natural. They had both been given a second chance, Ethan at a life of purpose, and Jessica at a life of presence. And it was all because a single dad, a man of simple means and immense courage, had, for a fleeting moment, chosen to be a hero. He had taken a bullet to save a little girl, and in doing so, he had saved himself, and he had saved her mother, too.